Good morning to all of you. Today we will discuss about supply. So, what is supply? Supply refers to the amount of good or service that a producer or provider are willing and able to offer to the market at various prices during a given period of time. Okay, so when we are understanding about supply, there are two important aspects of supply that we should understand in order to understand the concept of supply. So the first one is that supply refers to something what is offered for sale and not actually sold. Why? Because the amount which is actually sold not only depends on supply, it also depends upon the demand for the product. Right? So it is what is offered for sale. Second, that supply is a flow. That means that it is always spoken with respect to time. So quantity supplied per day, per week, per month, etc. So that is the concept of supply. Now, what are the determinants of supply? The first one is price of the commodity or price of good or service. Right? So it is one of the most important determinants of supply, and as a rule, we can say that when price of a product increases, quantity supplied also increases. So they are directly related to each other. Right? Now, the second one is price of related goods. Now, when we talk about price of related goods, or you can say price of other goods, so as we all know that resources have alternative uses, right? And the quantity supplied of a commodity depends not only on its price, but it also depends upon other commodities. So increase in price of other goods makes them more attractive for the producers to produce that, right? So what producers does that they shift from one good to the other, which for by producing whichever good they can earn more profit, they shift to that good, and quantity supplied of that particular good increases. Okay, so that is price of related goods or price of other goods. Next is price of factors of production. So since we all know that whenever anything is produced or any service is provided, very precious, scarce factors of production are used, right? What are factors of production? Basically land, labor, capital, and other things like time, and other things like raw material. All the things are included in factors of production. And if the price of these factors of production increase, then it affects the quantity supplied, right? So that is price of factors of production. Next is state of technology. So science and technology also affects supply. So if there is some technology with which the cost has somehow decreased, so the producers will be able to supply more of a good with the same price, right? But they can supply more because the cost has decreased. Now, why has the cost decreased? It could decrease because of decrease in the price of factor of production, or it could decrease with a better technology. So state of technology, if it gets better, then and because of that, the producers are able to get some technology through which they are able to produce a particular product at a low price, then quantity supplied increases, right? Next is government policy. Now when we speak about government policy, we are specifically referring to tax policy of the government. So if the government reduces the tax on a particular product, right? So the producers then get encouraged to produce more of that product, right? So again, it depends upon the tax policy of the government. Whatever government policy is there, according to that, the producer adjust their quantity supplied. Next is law of supply. So, as I've already mentioned, that all the factors we have discussed till now, keeping all those constant, and when we see the relationship between price of the product and quantity supplied, that is law of demand. Okay, so what is the relationship? They have a direct relationship, meaning that if price is increasing, quantity supplied will also increase with it. If price is falling down, quantity supplied will also fall with it, right? So higher the price, higher the quantity supplied, lower the price, lower the quantity supplied. Now other things remaining constant is very very important phrase, and you have to write that whenever you write law of supply. Now supply schedule and curve. So it is the same uh, as demand schedule and demand curve. So you have a table over here which is representing several prices, and with several prices we have several quantities supplied. When we plot this on a graph, then we get a positively sloping curve which is known as a supply curve. Okay, so and as you can see that as the price is increasing, quantity supplied is also increasing with it. Next is movement along the supply curve. So um, whenever there is change in quantity supplied due to change in the price of the product, then there is a movement along the supply curve, as you can see over here. So if we move in this direction, then the quantity supplied increases, and we call it extension along the supply curve or expansion along the supply curve. And if it moves in this direction, then we call it contraction along the supply curve, or we call it decrease in quantity supplied. Okay, so that is your movement along the supply curve. Next is shift in supply curve. So this happens because of change in any other determinant of supply other than its own price. So if price remains constant and any other factor changes, for example, price of factor of production goes down, then it might happen that the supply curve shifts outward. All right, and because of which we can see an increase in supply. And if for some reason government has imposed more of taxes, because of which quantity supplied has fallen down, so there is an inward shift in the supply curve and we can see a fall in the supply.